guys, and welcome back to the F-Series channel. Today we are going to be talking about something that I think all of us can agree on is a bit annoying. So we're going to be talking about FIA and their consistencies, or not their consistency, within penalties within Formula 1. So as we remember, back in 2019 we saw an incident where Max and Charles were racing at Austria and Charles went off the track and they just said no, that's just racing. So even though this seems to be a change for the FIA, do you girls think that they've stuck with that sort of it's just racing, like you can sort of push each other off the track if it's hard racing?
I just remember back then we had a big thing with let them race, and I think before that as well, I just want to make a quick point. I can't remember most incidents, but I just kind of remember the general consensus. Like, I can't be like, at this race this happened, because I'm just not that type of person. So I think most of us are like that. But I remember around that time we had this big thing of let them race. We need to let them race more because we were getting so many penalties, we're having so many inconsistencies, and they let them race. Obviously, if you're a fan of Max or if you're a fan of Charles, you're going to have a different opinion on it. I think that's going to happen regardless, because it's just the way that Formula 1 and fans work. But I think it was a very touch and go situation, but at the same time it was racing, and I did like the fact that we gave them a little bit of leeway, and you know, it was a hard fight. Whether there should have been a penalty or not, I don't know, but I think the principle of them, you know, putting this out there and we're like, we're going to let them race now is great. However, since then, I just think it's not even to the point where they're like going back on themselves. I think they're just going back and forth. And again, there's just no consistency with any sort of situation that they do. Like, you could probably look at something from some week and then it changing the next week. So overall, just looking at it as a general, we still have a very bad issue with inconsistency within Michael Massey's office.
Yeah, and on that point, Charles, you brought up the incident with Max and Charles, and that didn't get a penalty, whereas we saw in 2020 Lewis Hamilton and Alex Albon with the same or similar situation, and Lewis was smacked with that 5-second penalty. So it seems to be one rule for 1 year, another rule for another year, or one rule for one race, another rule for another. That's just the
sorry. I'm really sorry. I just choked on my water. Carry on.
What I was saying was, it just seems like even incidents which appear to be the same are being penalised differently, and I think that that's where the struggles with the inconsistencies come, because you can always say that you're being harsher for one instance and not as harsh for another instance. I just find it, if it's the same incident, it should be the same penalty. And the fact that there are inconsistencies within the same incidents, not even just different incidents in levels of severity, I think that is where our problem lies.
Yeah, I agree with everything the girls have said so far, and I do definitely think it's a pendulum swinging. Whereas they were being really lenient, and then we seem to have about 4 races in a row when things all started to go wrong, and the FIA were like, well, we need to take action, we need to get a lot harsher with this, or we need to get a lot more lenient, because it's just from one extreme to the other, and they can't seem to find this happy medium, which is where they need to go. But yeah, I agree with what the girls are saying, and it's just really frustrating as well, because I'm sure the drivers themselves just want to know what the rule is, and if they don't follow it, then X, Y, or Z is going to happen. I think one thing that also annoys me is track limits, and
oh god, I hate
like
them words.
lines
So much.
like track limits, like either the track is the limit the whole way around the track, like all the way around that white line is the edge of the track, or it's not. Not some corners, yes, not some corners, no, not some corners in practice, but not in the race. Sometimes halfway through the race, if you do it too many times, we'll just chuck it in. We've started using that one. Not that it annoys me.
Honestly. Do you want to know the worst part? It was when Monaco was on, and we just kept seeing track limits, and it's like, the track limit is the sea. It's the wall. What track limits are you talking about? I want to know.
Honestly, I think if you look at it, like, I swear, like, we had a qualifying session, they were like, track limits is on turn 6, for example, and then overnight there was like, in the race, okay, track limits is now turn 4, not turn 6. I know qualifying, obviously you're trying to get maximum speed over one lap, but surely that place is still going to give you maximum speed in the lap, in the race as well. And I think that's, anytime I hear track limits, I just honestly oh my god, I hate it, because people, I think we looked in Bahrain when people could see Lewis going over that line like 30 times, but then when Max did it to get the lead, it was like not on. But then also they changed that literally like mid-race. Like how's that possible? It just doesn't make sense. And also, go on, Seth.
I was just going to say, the white line should be track limits everywhere. You go all 4 wheels off that white line, that's it. You're done for. That's slapped with an Alex Albon track limits penalty. That's it.
Do you know what? I don't even mind when they go on the red and white curb. What do you call that? Apex? Is it an apex when it's off the? No, it's not an apex. It's just like the curb. The curb. The curb. Sorry, my analysis is very good. Yeah, I don't even mind when they go onto the curb, because at the end of the day, I like to see them. I wouldn't like them just be like round the track. Like I like when they go out a little bit and they drift back in. I love that. But when you're like out there, it's just not on. So I agree that like to an extent you can go onto the red and white curbs, but then when it's like going further out, it's like, well, that's not the track anymore, is it? Like it's just not the track. Why are you going out there? If we put gravel around every single bit of the track, you wouldn't be doing it. So why are you doing it now? So yeah,
I think an issue.
Go on, Donnie, sorry.
I was going to say, I think an issue is the fact that the FIA are trying to make rules work at tracks. Like, think about it. The cars, I have absolutely no idea, but I'm going to say the cars nowadays are the biggest cars we've ever had. And a lot of the tracks are years old and are used to much smaller cars. So to be able to do an overtake, you need more road because the cars are simply too big. So I do understand it from, like, the point of view of there needs to be a bit of discretion to allow overtaking, because the cars shouldn't be that big on the track, and we need to build bigger tracks if you don't want the cars going like wider tracks. Yeah. But someone else go, Shargo. I made my point.
I think another thing that really sort of confuses me with penalties and inconsistencies is if we go back, I think it was 2019 maybe, when Seb jumped the start. I don't know if he got a penalty or he didn't, and then Valtteri did the same thing a couple of races later. One of them got a penalty and one of them didn't, and it's like,
yeah, I think Seb got the penalty.
I was like, that's exactly the same incident. Why? I think it literally come down to Valtteri didn't go all the way over the line.
Yeah,
but they've still jumped the start. Like, there should still be a consistent penalty for that. And I think that's another like instant where I was like, this is messy, because what if next week someone does it again and then you give a penalty for that but you didn't give a penalty for this week? Like, you need to be, yes, this is it, yes, this is it, yes, this is it.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the wow. If you look at the bigger picture as well, it's got to be really frustrating for the teams, because at the end of the day, the fight is extremely intense this year, and it has been for other years, maybe not last year, but the fight has been intense between the teams. And if you are not getting consistent penalties, so for example, Ferrari and Mercedes both had competitive packages in 2019. If one of those teams is getting a penalty for something that the other team has done as well, but the other team isn't getting the penalty, then that is going to directly be impacting their fight and them on the championship. So I think not even necessarily for the fans, but for the teams and for the sake of equality within the sport, this needs to be something that's addressed, because I can't see the teams just laying down and letting this continue as it is.
I mean, teams fight over everything. Like we've started to hear the FIA and the teams' radios over the last couple of weeks. Which, can I say, we love, and you know they will argue over pretty much anything. And I think that's the fight off the track is as much as the fight on the track sometimes, because they're fighting over every little discrepancy, and they are obviously, of course, going to fight over. Well, they got a penalty there. They got a penalty there. Or they didn't get a penalty there. And I think I'm coming back to the start incident, which you said with Seb and Valtteri. From a fan's perspective and from like a casual watcher's perspective, you just see someone jump at the start, stopping and going again. One gets a penalty, one doesn't. So when you see that, you're like, whoa, hang on a minute, why is there a discrepancy here? But I guess I do get it in the sense that they've looked at the data and they've realised they haven't gone quite over that line, or they haven't done this, so it hasn't detected it. But at the end of the day, do you know what this reminds me of? I don't know much about football, so please excuse me.
Oh no.
It's
VAR.
it's a bit like VAR, right? Okay, now this is probably not even going to make sense. But like, you might not know whether they've gone over the line or not, so then you go and check like your data and then you see whether they have or haven't. But at the end of the day, you could check your data, say it's not there, but then you've also got the camera footage as well, which clearly shows that they've stopped and
Eyes.
started.
You have eyes.
Yeah. So it's like lovely that you're going across your data, but at the same time, you've physically got on board and so many cameras on every single one of these cars nowadays. You can see that they've jumped it. Why is it because you're waiting for your line that all of a sudden that means that that's okay? Is everyone just going to stop and start? Like, obviously you don't get an advantage for it, but if you did, everyone would do it. So then it comes around to another situation. So, Michael Massey, we're going to have words because it's getting too much.
We need like a wee F-Series to Michael Massey video graphic.
We
do.
I think like what you said, Kez, about VAR, like I know it's obviously for football, but that's a very good point, because I feel like, I know this is going to talk about football for a tiny bit, but like in the Premier League, I feel like it's way too regulated now. Like they've brought this thing in, they're not consistent with it, they check everything, they do this, they do that. And that sort of leads on to my next question is, do you think that motorsport across F1, F2, F3 has become too regulated? Like, do let them race, like do let them do this stuff. So yeah, Kez, I'll go with you first.
Sorry, yes, absolutely. Let's just bring up, okay, the Puebla E-Prix with Pascal Wehrlein. Right, here we go.
The what E-Prix?
Puebla, sorry.
Puebla?
How do you say it? The Mexico one.
Puebla.
Anyway, let's just bring this up because I think Formula E have such an issue with this. They do it all the time. We had an incident where Pascal Wehrlein won his race, fair and square, but because the team didn't declare their tyres, bearing in mind they get 3 sets of tyres throughout the whole weekend anyway. Think about how many they get in Formula 1. In Formula E, they had 3 sets. But because the FIA didn't check that they had the data from the teams that they required, they waited until 5 seconds after he'd crossed that finish line and he got slap bang with penalty, disqualified. His same thing, he had a technical infraction the next day and he got dropped down from P2 to P4. The same thing happened on the same day that Pascal was meant to win with, I think it was 4 other drivers as well that had the same issue. And it's just like, it's silly. It gets to the point where it's silly things. I think if it's not something, if you get disqualified for something you've done on track, or there's something that's been detrimental towards your race, and if it's affected your speed, so say if it's given you an advantage, that's when I think you should be disqualified. When you're being disqualified for really petty things before the race, which have no impact on your ability, because Pascal absolutely dominated the whole field, the fact that they didn't say, we're on these tyres, bear in mind you've got 3 sets anyway, because they didn't tell the FIA that means that he's disqualified. I think it's absolutely ridiculous, and that comes to another point where it's way too overregulated. That just shouldn't be the way it should go. I think you need to have a bit of personable, approach to a lot of these things, and there just isn't there. And I could go on about that for so long because I'm absolutely still fuming about it. The whole of the Formula E paddock were as well. I mean, there's people that were meant to be, not biased. It was meant to kind of be, what do you call that word? Just
impartial.
Impartial, that's the one. I'm absolutely fuming.
You can tell she's so passionate about
she's
this
vexed.
I literally am. There are people that
Like,
be
Kira
impartial.
speaks fast anyway, but
Sorry.
that was just like bleh.
Sorry, but I was just going to say, there's people in the paddock that were meant to be impartial, and even they were like, this is ridiculous. And I think it gets to the point where when everyone's outraged, there's clearly an issue. Sort it out. Anyway, carry on. I'm finished.
Yeah, just following on in terms of Formula E, just want to throw it back to the Valencia E-Prix when we had those issues with basically every time you get a safety car, they take away battery power.
But they took too much.
Just for reasons. But they took too much away, and then the FIA ended up blaming the teams for not managing the energy properly, when this was basically the first time we raced, or Formula E had raced on a street circuit, and it was new
Not
to
a street
everyone.
Circuit.
Not a street, that's the one.
The
That's
other
what I
one.
meant.
A permanent track.
So yeah, it just comes back to that. I think Formula E is extremely overregulated, but if we kind of bring it over to Formula 1, we can kind of see the same thing. I mean, the point that I want to pick up on in terms of overregulation is the fact that everything is at the FIA's discretion, which is fine because these are all knowing, very smart motorsport people. However, just looking back to the Monaco Grand Prix in Formula 2, when Deledda was allowed to race after exceeding the 107% rule in qualifying, and that was at the FIA's discretion, but we weren't given any information about that. And I think that that's one of the biggest problems that we have. It's that there is no transparency between the FIA and between fans. So they did that, but it was at their discretion, and we had no idea why that was overturned or why he was allowed to race. There was just no information given to the fans. And I think the same happened at Puebla. We didn't get any information throughout the race that Pascal Wehrlein was under investigation, and then it was just at the end of the race, you're disqualified. And I think that all the teams and all of the fans, we need that transparency from the FIA. If you're going to make these decisions, we at least deserve to know why you're making these decisions or what's going on, and we deserve to be informed throughout. I'm also annoyed. Wow.
Yeah, I'm 100% with what Steph has just said. Like, we need transparency, and I think that is just such a key thing to allow your fans to continue to be fans and make them feel part of the sport. No one likes stuff going on behind closed doors.
Sang that for you.
And yeah, it's all about and I do think this is genuinely starting to happen now in the small steps, such as getting the radio to the FIA to the teams, but I'm not sure if that's more commercialised rather than transparency.
Yeah, I think we raised like really good points here for like regulation, and I think another thing is like what I always find really weird is like if a team does an unsafe pit release, drivers will get penalty for it. I'm like, the driver is being told to go by the team. That's on the team. Like, how do you penalise a driver for that? And I always find that's really strange. So obviously, I understand it is unsafe. They do need to learn from it. But it's like, how is that the driver? So that sort of like leads on to sort of the final point, really. And what can be done to fix these inconsistencies? Do you think it needs to go by a case-by-case basis? Or do you think the rules need to be clear-cut, no exceptions? Because obviously what you said, Steph, is FIA... they choose what they want to, they choose, oh, this is fine, this isn't. So do you think it should be case by case, or do you think it should be clear, you don't do this, you get a penalty, if you do that, you get a penalty?
Oh, see, this is really difficult because there are so many different situations where you can't do it, where you can't make a blanket rule for everything because there's so many situations where things differ. I would like to see less penalties. I would like to see it more on track, and I think... the clap just
sorry, I needed to think up.
No, like the black and orange, was it the black and orange flag that we saw that was like, you're racing hard but don't do that again? And I think we saw that in Monza 2019. I really liked that, but we never saw it again. That was the only time that I've seen the black and orange flag be out. And it's just, I would love that to be a rule, but then I think, oh, you can't do it on a case-by-case basis. It's so difficult because how do you then say this is worth a 5-second penalty and this is just a black and orange flag, you know? Maybe you have the flag and then you end up with the penalty, but what if you ignore something beforehand that should have had a black and orange flag, and then the second instance you end up with the black and orange flag, and
Steph,
then
do you know what you're describing right now? You're describing inconsistency.
Yes, you are. Alright, Michael, I didn't know Michael was in F-Series.
That's me. I will say, actually, I feel like these inconsistencies have kind of popped up as a result of Michael Massey taking charge in the FIA office as well. Yeah. I just feel like since then, we've had a lot of inconsistencies. When Charlie was involved, when he was writing it, I don't remember having this many problems.
Yeah.
And I've gone off track. That was not
No, I get that. That's what I was going to pick up on, because I think we've all became more of a fan of the sport since Michael Massey had taken over, because Charlie did pass away a good couple of years ago now. So maybe it is because we are more aware, but from kind of how I'm thinking about it, I do feel the same way as Steph. Since Charlie, passed away and Michael took over, I do feel like we are seeing more inconsistencies. And obviously I feel like, Charlie got on with the drivers so well, and Charlie was the person that they could just go to. And I think Charlie knew it a bit more, whereas I feel like Michael's kind of keeping his distance, and I think that doesn't help as well. But what point was I next going to make? I had something that I really wanted to say. Go to Donnie and I'd come back to me.
I don't even know what the question is. What's the question?
Oh, I know what I was going to say. No, I know what I was going to say. So, this is a mess. My brain was going. I started thinking about Michael Massey again. Anyway, so go back to the rule book. I think with the rule book, I think it's too dated, and I feel like we need to get back to modern times. As you said, the cars are massive now. The cars are so much bigger. We're going into new regs next year. I feel like the rule book really needs to have a big fat sit down, right? Have a good look at it and change things that need to be done. Because I think looking at it, it's just not how it should be, and I just don't feel like it reflects 2021. But at the same time, I do feel like I feel like there needs to be a mix between going through the rule book, but at the same time going through case by case, because you need to be more personable with it. And I feel like sometimes you get a penalty when it's stupid, sometimes you don't get a penalty when you should. So I feel like you need to be hand in hand. You need to have the rule book with you, but you also need to be personable and read the situation and read the room. And I think them two, these are the two situations. Michael's in the middle and he's not connecting them. Like the power's off, they're like here and it's just not working, and he's flicking between the two and it's just not working. So I feel like that's the two things: personable, and then also the actual rule book. Mush them together, use your brain, and Bob's your uncle.
I don't know how I can go after that, so Bob's your uncle.
Bob's your uncle.
Okay, yeah, so I think it also should be like, I think, like you said, Steph, like if it's a yellow flag and you do something that's like under a yellow flag, yes, you get a penalty for it. It shouldn't be you don't and you do. But if it's something like a crash on track or something like that, I think it should be case by case, because they're all different. So yeah, I think that's our chat about FIA inconsistencies. I think you can see that we've all got picked up on things over the past couple of years where we're like, oh, it's so frustrating. So let us know down below what you think and put what annoys you from FIA. If you're not subscribed already, make sure you subscribe, because we have videos every Friday. Give us a like and a comment, and we'll see you next Friday. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.